In the late 90s, there was a science fiction adventure movie that I was very much looking forward to seeing. It had a lot of actors that I really liked. The teasers were really exciting, lots of really good action and visual effects. It looked like a very stylish movie. The promotional materials, however, did not offer a great deal of information about what the plot was, what the story was. Sound familiar? So when I finally saw The Fifth Element, starring Bruce Willis and Gary Oldman, directed by Luc Besson, I was, well, let's just say afterwards I felt like the reason why they kept the plot a secret is because they were embarrassed by it. And I'm making the comparison between those two movies, between The Fifth Element and Star Wars The Force Awakens, because I felt like, in the end, there really wasn't a lot to the story. You know, what elements weren't lifted away from the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, was basically just a big missing persons movie. And I felt in retrospect that they could have basically left off the Starkiller-based plotline completely. I mean, if the First Order, the bad guys in the movie, had almost the entirety of the map that would lead them to Luke's location, then the story could have been constructed in a way where Finn, the stormtrooper that leaves the First Order and wants to work for, you know, the Resistance, instead finds out this information, and so it's a race to find Luke before the First Order does. It seems like the Starkiller base was just completely unnecessary, and mostly they're just for, you know, a big set piece at the end, rather than it having real significance to the story. The significant parts for me were, of course, Rey discovering she has the ability of the Force, Finn finding his way from the First Order to you know, fight on the side of the good guys, and of course Han, you know, working to figure out a way, trying to figure out a way to get his son back from the dark side. By the way, in case you didn't notice the title of this video, there are going to be a lot of spoilers here. So there was a lot that, there were some things that rubbed me the wrong way about the movie, but there was also things that rubbed me the wrong way about the marketing for the movie, particularly the way they played up the involvement of what they call the legacy cast, the veterans, the Star Wars veterans from the original trilogy. Luke Skywalker as a character is very important to the story. You know, the First Order, they want to find him so they can kill him and wipe out the Jedi forever. The good guys, they want to find Luke because they need him. He's the last Jedi. They need his leadership. They need his power, his strength. So the character of Luke is very important. However, the actor, Mark Hamill, playing him, not quite nearly so important. He only shows up in the very last scene. He says nothing. He does practically nothing at all. Of course, he exchanges a sort of loaded look with Rey at the end as she offers him his lightsaber. Is it just me, or does he look a little pissed off that somebody actually figured out where he was hiding out? I don't know, he seemed a little bit perturbed. I was talking in my previous video on Star Wars about how this franchise, along with other franchises, seems to suffer from a Hunger Games syndrome, and that is, there's so many story threads that are deliberately left unresolved because there's going to be another movie. And actually, my frustration of this doesn't start with the Hunger Games. It actually starts with Lord of the Rings, because I wasn't really familiar with the story of Lord of the Rings. I hadn't read the books, and I knew basically that the plot of the movie was going to be Frodo and other heroic characters taking this very, very powerful ring to a place where it can be destroyed because it's like, I don't know, consolidated evil power or something like that. But at the end of the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, they weren't even halfway there, and I thought, oh, wait a second, are you telling me that it's not going to be until the end of the third movie. I thought that the journey to destroy the ring would be basically what the plot of the first movie is about, and the second and third movies would be their own adventures. But no, it's all big, one long story stretched over three-hour plus movies, even longer with the special editions. It's like more like 11 hours rather than 9. And I found that really, really frustrating, having to wait an entire year, or 2 years in that case. And in the case of the new Star Wars series, it's going to be, you know, another 4 years before we see what happens at the end of Episode 9, and these plot threads involving Rey and Finn and Kylo Ren will finally be resolved at that point. It's like these movie franchises have become enormous, big-budgeted television series in which you have to wait 1 year or more for the next episode. There are certain TV shows I really like. I enjoy watching them because there's an ongoing storylines as well as the individual plots of whatever episode is happening. But they come so much more frequently, you know? You get them basically once a week. At the worst, you have to basically wait from the end of one season to the beginning of the next, and that's like a couple of months normally, you know, for a regular series broadcast week by week on network or cable TV. But with the movies, it's a different animal because you've got to wait so long for the next episode. It just really makes me want to like jump in a time machine, you know, jump forward to the year 2020, gather up all the Star Wars and Marvel and DCU movies that exist on DVD and just watch them, you know, one night at a time and just sort of get it over with because of the marketing, the anticipation. The marketing is just so annoying at times. You know, it isn't just the trailers and the promotional spots and the clips and what have you, you know, and all these behind-the-scenes things. It's all the products that are related to Star Wars. I recall last summer there was an article by one of my favorite film critics, a guy who wrote for the local paper that I read when I was growing up. He wrote a column about how his teenage daughter had said to him, "Hey, Dad, have you seen the new Star Wars preview? It's great." She was talking about the one that debuted in April, I think, you know, the one with the Mark Hamill narration. And he says, "I'm not watching that. Why would I ever want to watch a trailer for a Star Wars movie when I'm automatically going to see it?" He asserted that Star Wars was a movie, especially a sequel to Return of the Jedi that had returning veteran characters, was the movie that needed marketing the least. All they had to do was put an announcement up that said, "New Star Wars movie, Han's back, the end," and everyone would go and see it without having all the anticipation, all the tie-in products, you know, for Subway and for cars and batteries and who knows what else, all these Star Wars related stuff. I mean, I got sick and tired of hearing about Star Wars in the lead up to this movie's release. It was just non-stop, and I thought, why is all this necessary? It's Star Wars. Harrison Ford is back as Han. The effects are amazing, you know, it's J.J. Abrams, everything like that. I mean, why are they pummeling us with this marketing when it seems so completely unnecessary? They just had to make sure that every single person in the entire universe knew about Star Wars, you know? And of course everyone, you know, and his grandmother is making videos about what they thought of the new Star Wars movie. I subscribe to a British girl who talks about her condition where she compulsively pulls her hair out, and even she made a Star Wars video. It's completely unrelated to anything else that she does on YouTube. It's really, really strange. So yeah, getting you know, inundated with all that stuff, and I'm actually also a member of a Facebook group in which is comprised of Star Wars fans. I got invited to join by a friend of mine, and so basically for months leading up to the release of the movie, and for, you know, ever since then, we've been posting funny videos that are related to Star Wars and previews, behind-the-scenes clip, interviews, this, that, and the other thing, and after the movie came out, someone posted up a notice that said, or maybe it was, you know, one of those memes of some kind that said, you know, "If you know someone who didn't like the new Star Wars movie, cut that person out of your life. You don't need that kind of negativity." I'm like, oh boy, you know, I really don't feel like I belong here anymore, because when I saw, finally, for the first time, Star Wars The Force Awakens, I was kind of let down by it, you know? And I think part of the problem is that I didn't feel the elation that I have felt for Star Wars in the past. I mean, even with the prequels, which are garbage, initially there's that excitement with seeing a new Star Wars movie, and that was missing this time. I felt more in the very first scene of J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie than I did throughout all of The Force Awakens. You know, that's a really good opening to the Star Trek movie, where Kirk's mom is giving birth to him in the shuttlecraft as they're trying to get away from the ship that's being destroyed, and meanwhile his dad, played by Chris Hemsworth, is still on the bridge trying to, you know, fight off the attack. Yeah, it's a really emotional scene, really well played. And there wasn't really anything like that. Not even the death of Han himself, which I saw coming kind of from a mile away. I have a feeling that Harrison Ford really enjoyed doing the press tour for this movie because he knew that he was never ever going to have to do it again. Not only was he confident that the movie would be fun, that people would enjoy it, and that he enjoyed it, but this was his last turn talking about, you know, Han. He can pretty much retire from public life and never have to appear in another movie again after this. He probably got paid a boatload to appear in this movie. Although I did read recently that he is going to be in a new sort of political tech thriller or something like that. I thought, wow, really? I thought he'd be done after this. I thought that this would be like his swan song, but apparently not. He's going to be in another movie with Anthony Hopkins, so I guess we'll see about that. But yeah, so about the movie itself. The last time I remember really sort of feeling that incredible excitement and seeing something really and just getting so involved in what was happening on screen was Inception, which was almost 6 years ago. Just really excited by the concept of the movie, just how different it was, and the tension and everything like that, and I just had a hard time feeling this way about this movie. I worry that I'm basically going to be missing that from here on out. Any new movie that I see is never going to affect me that way again. Of course, when you're a kid, pretty much everything is really cool. You know, every new movie experience that you have is exciting, at least for the least, you know, maybe that's not true for the most jaded kids out there, but yeah, for me it was just like, you know, new Star Wars movies, new Star Trek, Superman, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, things like that, E.T., you know, it was just endlessly exciting. And that's a feeling that I'm probably never going to be able to recapture, unfortunately. So it could just be me. It could be my fault, not any fault of J.J. Abrams or the people who made this movie. But it could be just the fact that I'm older and I'm more jaded and I'm expecting certain things from movies and I'm not expecting things from other movies, and the ones that I'm not expecting things from are the ones that end up probably pleasing me more, because without those expectations I pretty much take it as is. Whereas with a movie like the new Star Wars movie, I have these expectations about what it could be and what it might not be and what I hope it will be, and when I see it, it's just basically an ordinary movie, you know. It isn't the second coming. Like I was saying, you know, the Starkiller base thing just seemed really unnecessary, just basically one big long callback to the original film and Jedi to a certain extent, with them attacking the giant base. Speaking of which, the Starkiller base, I've discussed this with a few friends of mine. It fuels its huge superweapon with a nearby sun, but since it's built into an actual planet rather than a self-propelled mobile space station, it can only basically use the stars that are within reach of it. The second time it draws power from a nearby star, the sky goes completely dark, so there's no more stars around. So it's only basically got one shot left. After that, it won't be able to fire anymore, and they won't be able to use it anymore other than just sort of like a base of operations. But, you know, they spent all this time and these resources building this super weapon, and they can only end up using it twice. Seems like kind of a big waste of time. I felt like, again, if they had sort of geared the movie more towards the hunt for the information that would lead them to Luke, you know, especially if Finn was able to supply the Resistance with the information that the First Order had, most of the map already needed that one last piece, because the Resistance was not aware of that at all. That would have certainly upped the stakes a little bit. Of course, Finn would need to be more than just a mere stormtrooper in order to know that. He would probably need to be one of the higher-ups. So I'm not sure if his you know, redemptive arc would really work all that well. But, you know, it's just one of those things where I felt, if you want to have a super weapon, why not just mount a more energy-efficient version of the Death Star ray on a big Star Destroyer, rather than have, you know, a whole new spherical battle station to blow up in the end. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would have made different choices. Not that I could have made a better movie than J.J. Abrams, but I don't think that the Starkiller base should have been the focus of so much of what was happening. And by the way, the New Republic, the new government for the galaxy, gets like maybe 20 seconds worth of screen time before it's destroyed. And so many people are saying, oh, we don't want any more talk about politics, we don't more talk about trade routes and taxations and things like that. You know, all that stuff's boring. All we want is action, which is very disappointing to me. You know, I'm more interested in, you know, those sorts of storylines now than I would be, I guess, when I first saw Star Wars movies. But these aren't people who are kids anymore, you know, grown people, you know, who are saying, no, all we want is the excitement, the action, and the good versus evil conflict, rather than all this other, you know, sort of chicanery. And that's too bad, really, because I wanted to see a little bit more of the Republic before it got blown to smithereens. The New Republic, you know, which, you know, you didn't even get to see any of Alderaan, basically, before it got destroyed. You had Leia there as sort of a representative of Alderaan and all the people that died. But that really wasn't the case with the Republic. There were some scenes, I gather, that got cut, and you can probably read the novelization to get an idea of what would happen during those, so I'm told, which I haven't read yet. I've actually finished reading a book called Tarkin by James Luceno, which is about, it takes place prior to Episode 4, where we see Tarkin going on a mission basically with Darth Vader prior to, as the Death Star is basically still under construction. I like the book a lot. I thought it was really good. The author, James Luceno, also wrote Labyrinth of Evil, which is the story that takes place immediately before Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And right now I'm reading Cloak of Deception, which is basically a pre-Episode 1 story that he also wrote. He's a good writer. I don't like this book as much as Tarkin, but yeah, it's really interesting. Tarkin's a fun book because the main character is actually one of the bad guys. So you're sort of rooting for him to accomplish what he's trying to do because you're seeing the thing from his perspective. But at the same time, you got to go, oh, wait a second, these are the bad guys. It's kind of cool seeing a Star Wars story written mostly from the perspective of the villains, what we normally consider the villains of the saga. So anyway. Rey, like the actress who plays Rey, Daisy Ridley, she has a lot of energy, but I felt like she could have been better directed. And there was one specific point in which I really noticed this. When Finn tells her, he's been keeping the secret that he's a former stormtrooper, and when he finally reveals this to her, her expression doesn't change. She's listening to him very intently, but she doesn't react at all to this new bit of information. You think that would be something of a shock to her. But she doesn't really react at all, which is kind of a shame. Missed opportunity there. Also, I gotta wonder why she knows so much about the technology she encounters for the first time. She's able to disable systems on the Starkiller base just by finding one little widget and then pulling it out, or fixing the Millennium Falcon, you know, just without really knowing it, without having never set foot on it before. I can buy her flying the thing around because the controls, you know, for a ship are probably pretty common from ship to ship, but fixing the thing just immediately, you know, at the drop of a hat just seems like a bit of a stretch. Like Han was saying on Starkiller Base, as Finn was saying, how do we disable the shields? I don't know, we'll use the Force. And he says, that's not how the Force works. And I sort of felt the same way about Rey in that sense. I like Finn a lot. I like him as a character. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of what he does on the upcoming movies. But again, so much of my interest in this is just about what's going to happen rather than what did happen. Because the characters are just starting out and I want to see them progress a little bit more before the end of the movie, which really didn't happen that much. With Rey it certainly did. But I have to wonder about her abilities with the Force, being that she's able to exercise mind control during just speaking and using the telekinesis aspects of the Force. You'd think that if she heard stories about Luke and other Jedi using their powers, they must have been very, very detailed, because otherwise, how would she know how to do any of that stuff, you know? It's just like, oh, the Force is something that's innately within you, you know? And then she's just able to do all these Jedi things, you know, just because she heard about it. She must have heard a lot. I don't know. I don't know. It's a nitpick, but really, it's the kind of thing that bugs me now. Also, something that bugged me, Han using Chewie's weapon for the first time, his bowcaster. You'd think after all this time he would have noticed just how much more powerful Chewie's rifle is versus his pistol. But he's just like, wow, that's really good. I want to use that more often. I'm just like, dude, you've been partnering up with, you guys are the best of friends, you've been partnering up with him for ages now, and you only just notice now just how powerful his weapon is. Yeah, hard to buy that. I found Harrison Ford's performance to be a little overly comical in some parts. A little hard to take him seriously at times. And I'm also wondering how he was able to, like, go to hyperspace from inside the cargo ship when there's people inside there. I mean, they were, like, trying to breathe, right? How could he jump out of the ship directly without opening the door, unless the door was already open, at which point the people who were gathered around the ship before he took off would be dead immediately. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right, force fields. I forgot. Invisible force fields. He just shoots right through them. They keep the air in, right? Something like that? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things that just sort of go unspoken. I'm just thinking about details like, well, how could this happen? How could this happen? Etc., etc. I like Maz Kanata a lot. I hope we see more of her in other movies. But the characters I'm most intrigued by are Snoke and Kylo Ren. And originally, in my first video, I was saying I really liked Donald Gleason, how he played Hux. I thought he was sort of childish in his exertion of authority, you know, very, very haughty, and I enjoyed his performance a lot. Maybe kind of a one-dimensional character at this point. On my second viewing, I started to appreciate Adam Driver's Kylo Ren quite a bit more. I never thought, you know, I'll give the writers credit for one thing. Being able to stop a blaster bolt in mid-air with the Force is really impressive. So this guy has got major skills. But he also is inexperienced in other ways. And I want to take a second to recommend you guys watch a video by Jeremy Jahns. Jeremy Jahns is a very, very popular YouTuber and movie reviewer. He has lots of viewers, but if you haven't seen his spoilerful review of The Force Awakens, you really should, because he breaks down the Kylo Ren character very, very well. It's sort of a common sense analysis of Kylo Ren. I really enjoy it, so I recommend you check that out. But when Adam Driver first got cast, and when he first took the helmet off the movie, I'm just like, he just does not look like he belongs in this movie. Like, Ryan Gosling, for me, didn't belong in the movie Fracture, because it's hard to see him as a Tom Cruise type lawyer. He just seems so laid back. The way he speaks is laid back. And Adam Driver's the type of actor who just doesn't seem to fit into a movie of this genre. But on the second viewing, I really started to appreciate him a bit more, and appreciated that, you know, sort of uncertain nature to his character. He comes off very intimidating in a lot of ways. And my favorite moment of the entire movie was the one where he has his freak out when he notices Rey is missing from the chair she's being held in, and he starts bashing the place up, and you see two stormtroopers walking towards the room, and suddenly they stop, they hear what's going on, they go, we better go the other way, we don't want to mess with this guy right now, and walk in the other direction. That was definitely my favorite part of the movie. I also liked little thumbs up from BB-8, that was cute too. But yeah, when he's interrogating Rey and he looks into her head and he sees the vision of the planet that's mostly water with a few scattered islands, that's a place that Rey actually hasn't been to yet, as far as we know. You know, she goes there to find Luke at the end of the movie, but he's not looking into her past, he's looking into her future, which is really cool. And he wasn't even aware of it. And she's probably thinking planet with a lot of water, but only a few scattered islands. I don't think I've been there yet, but she's smart and doesn't say anything about it, you know. And then she has her confrontation with Kylo Ren and fights him off with the mind control thingy, and that was pretty cool as well. But yeah, the whole business with who is Snoke and where did he come from, I was hoping to get a few answers in this movie about that, and of course didn't. Then again, there's a lot I still don't know about Palpatine as well, so, you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm reading some of these books, is just to learn more about Palpatine, because I really enjoy that character a bit. Yeah, so, like I said, the movie overall is well made scene to scene, but there's just so much that's unanswered and so much I felt that was unsatisfying. It's definitely not my favorite Star Wars movie, and it's not my favorite J.J. Abrams movie either. I still like Mission Impossible 3 and the first Star Trek more. And part of the reason for that is just the way the movie is made, to leave you hanging and leave you wanting more, and sorry you gotta wait 2 years for the next bit. But from what I've read, the new Star Wars movie Rogue One, which is supposed to come out at the end of this year, is going to have Darth Vader in it. And as long as they can get James Earl Jones to do the voice again, I'm definitely on board for that. So, so yeah, I had to re-record this entire video because I did it last night. I was just like rambled so much, and this was a bit rambling too, but I had a little bit better idea of what I wanted to say about the film now that I've had a lot of time and perspective to sort of gather my thoughts on it. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I appreciate you watching, and thanks to my new subscribers for coming on board recently. I appreciate that very much. My next review will be of The Hateful Eight, which I saw a couple weeks ago. Hope you'll tune in for that. Talk to you later. Bye.